But what I am suggesting is you'll find it's often more effective if you come back with the reverse of what they're showing you. If there's hostility and anger there, and you can come back with kindness, with understanding, and particularly with questions. We as managers really need to use questions more, because questions say, I care about you. I want to understand what's inside you, what your concern is, why you feel upset in this situation, or what the real conflict is. Number 6, beware of the ultimatum. Why do I say beware of the ultimatum? The problem here is that ultimatums tend to back us into a corner. They tend to put us in a position where it's tough for us to save face, or the other party to save face. Many times your role as a manager is going to be to help that other party save face because they have issued some type of an ultimatum. If somebody says, for instance, this is the way it has to be, this is my final offer, immediately you start thinking about what additional information can you throw in here that will help that individual save face as they comfortably back off of the ultimatum that they have provided you. When the other person is hostile or emotionally hurt, express sorrow and empathy. Sorrow and empathy without accepting responsibility. People like to know that you understand, that you hear, that you're empathetic. Now, you may not agree with what they're saying, so you do not necessarily need to accept responsibility for the problem they're perceiving. But them knowing that you care and that you understand makes a big difference in reducing their emotional level. The 8th suggestion, I think I can perhaps best prove with an example. Now, I've been studying each of you, and I'd like to select somebody, if I could, for this experiment. Dave, would you mind if I selected you? Dave, do you have any idea what's going to happen next?
Not right now.
Okay. I have in my pocket here 3 cards. I'd like to take them out and show them to you and everyone. We have a yellow card, a blue card, a red card. Dave, which of those cards, now Dave, you got to promise me that you'll be honest in this situation. Okay. Which of those cards most appeals to you from a color standpoint?
The red one.
The red one does. He selected the red card. Now, knowing that I was going to use Dave for this particular experiment, I wrote a message to him in the envelope that I pulled it out from. I'd like you to find the message in there, Dave, and if you will, read it to everyone.
On a red piece of paper, because your personality will select red.
You see, people are different. Now think about this experiment. If I would have selected someone else in this room, there are a few of you that may have selected red, but many of you would have selected blue, and some of you would have selected yellow. It is so important that we understand our employees and treat them differently on the basis of their likes and on the basis of their dislikes. So the point of number 8 is people are different, but they're predictably different. One of the ways that you can be effective as a manager in resolving conflict is to think about the questioning process. And how can we be more effective in that questioning process? First of all, why would you ask questions? I would suggest to you, you want to know what the other person wants. And that's the real purpose for asking questions here. Key in on what their needs are. Key in on what their feelings are. Key in on what their thinking is so that you can handle each person differently. Let's, for example, look at some good questions that you might ask. One thing you might say, for instance, is there anything else I should know in regard to this matter? excellent question, because you're going to get information that you didn't know how to ask for in any other way. Or you might use the hypothetical question. What if? Or suppose that, and pose a hypothetical situation to them to draw out more of the information that will be helpful in resolving that conflict. Or you might say, you know, if I could wave a magic wand over you in this situation, what would you hope would happen? That'll give you real insight into that conflict situation. Or you might say, why did you say that? I'm curious. I'm interested in what you said. Can you tell me why you said that? And you probe further. And you keep on saying, and you get more information, because knowledge gives you power as a manager. And you're much more effective in being able to handle that individual when you understand how they're truly feeling and how they're truly thinking. Now, if question asking in a conflict situation is important, question answering also is. And many times, as managers, you'll have questions posed to you. Now, I would suggest in at least 95% of the cases, you're going to answer those questions directly. But as a good manager, there are some alternatives that you have to answering a question directly. Can we brainstorm together here for a minute and try to figure out what else you might do when a direct question is posed to you as a manager in the 5% of the time, perhaps, when you don't answer it directly? What else can you do? What are some options here?
Ask another one back.
There's an excellent response. You can ask another question back, and sometimes, as a manager, that is the best response to a question. You might say something as simple as, gee, why do you ask that? Or perhaps it might be, how would you like me to answer that question? Two good standard questions that can be used anytime a question is posed to you and you're not sure exactly how to answer it. Is there anything else that you can do when a question is asked of you? What are some other alternatives? How about delay? You have that option. You know, that's a good question, and I want to answer it. But you know, in order to answer it, we need to understand this, and you shift over and discuss what needs to be discussed before you turn your attention to that particular problem. Anything else that you can do? How about ask to have the question repeated? There is an excellent standard technique, because I'll tell you what happens normally when you ask to have a question repeated. It normally comes back in a way that's a little bit easier for you to answer. As a matter of fact, it never gets harder, so it's an excellent technique. Anything else that you can do? How about, yes?
Ignore it.
Ignore it. You have the right to ignore the question. That's exactly what I was just going to say. You have the right to be silent. And sometimes the best response to a question is silence. Did you notice